Hello YouTube, Matt here. Starting a new series as of today, we are going to do a deck breakdown series. What I'm going to do is, each of these videos are going to be based around the Lyrical Master decks. And we're going to go over the actual playstyles. Then we're going to go over the cores. We're then going to look over their tech options that you can include their decks. I'm going to give you one or two example lists of the decks. And then we're going to have a demonstration fight at the end, which will be me on TTS using one of the example lists against someone else. First one up this week is going to be based around Rondeau of Duskmoon Feltyroza. Feltyroza's playstyle is all about the multiple attacks, swapping out in the battle phase to create the additional spaces to do the attacks. All this is done whilst having additional drive checks due to Feltyroza's skill. It's a tempo-based deck, so obviously you can rush when needed to in certain matchups, but it can also be a defensive deck against the other ones. Really nice deck overall, so let's start with the deck core. Right, deck cores. What I mean by deck core is the main structure of the deck, so the minimum cards you will see in every copy of the Feltyrosa list. We aren't going to include PGs, we aren't going to include starters, we aren't going to include triggers. The reason for this is because every deck runs 4 PGs, every deck has a starter, and triggers are down, most of the time, down to personal preference of the 8-3s, 7-4s, 5-6s. It all comes down to personal preference, so we can't really cover those in a core. But first card up for the deck core is going to be the boss monster herself, Rondeau of Duskmoon Feltyroza. Feltyrosa's skill is Auto Vanguard Circle. When you drive check reveals a ghost normal unit, you may call that unit to an open front row rearguard circle. Then if you've pulled a unit, you may counterblast 1, and this unit gets drive +1 until the end of that battle. So this is really good for the fact of, obviously, this is our main boss unit of the deck we focus around. She's a vampire herself, so she doesn't actually activate her own skill, so it is a bit of a downside there. But she's our multi-attack provider, because obviously calling to the empty rearguard circles that we've cleared off with other units to get additional attacks in. She is RNG focused, because obviously you could drive check PG and Feltyrosa herself and then not get any calls off of her. You could also drive check double triggers and you're not getting any calls, so you do have to... There is the RNG involved, but you can get some bonuses out of it. The other downside is she does need empty front row rearguard circles, so if you do get stuck with 2 units that can't clear themselves from the front row, you aren't going to get the multi-attack sector. Next card up in the core is Talent of Enjoyment, Feltyrosa. Her skill is Auto. When this unit is rode upon, you may cost reveal a ghost normal unit from your hand and put it to the top of your deck, to then choose a ghost from your drop zone and put it back into your hand. Her second skill is Continuous Vanguard Rearguard Circle. During your turn, if you have 3 or more ghosts on your rearguard circle, this unit gets power plus 5000. So this is really good because obviously the on-ride skills helps you set up your Duskmoon Feltyrosa plays to give you less chance of actually not having a ghost. It also enables some of your cards that do activate when called from decks. Obviously, this actually works with them really nicely. Her second skill does actually help for the fact that if you do have to go aggro, she gains an extra 5k if you've chucked a field down, which with some of the units you can actually warrant to do this. Next stable card up is CAPRICCIO of Circulating Star INGRID. INGRID's skill is Auto. When this unit is placed on rearguard circle other than from your hand, you may cast charge 1, choose one of your other rearguards in the same column and stand this unit. And then her second skill is Auto Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, this unit gets power plus 5000 to the end of that battle, and then at the end of that battle, put this unit on the bottom of your deck. So the first skill is really nice because obviously being drove check off of Feltyrosa herself, calls her to Rearguard Circle, you can't blast for the drive check, then instantly getting your counter charge back off, and then reselling a booster behind it. So meaning if you stacked it, for example, with Talent of Enjoyment Feltyrosa, so you know it's on top, you can swing in full-on booster for the first attack, clear off that front row, then this will come to the front row and stand the booster back up again. Second skill is really nice as well for the fact that it actually clears out your front row by tucking itself to the bottom of the deck, but that does become then an issue, obviously, of once you've seen them, you more than likely aren't going to see them for the rest of the game because there is no real shuffle in the Feltyrosa deck. Next card up is Selfie Practice Anneliese. Anneliese's skill is Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked whilst boosted. You can put this card into your soul, choose one of your rearguard, and it gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So overall, she's a really good card because she clears out front row again. She provides you one of your key resources in soul charging, powers up other units like ERNESTA who can multi-attack, help with the multi-attacks to give it a bit of extra power. The only downside with Anneliese is she is a 12k attacker, so obviously she doesn't scale well with the 8k boost to animate to 20k. She is really good for the if you're going first and you're on grade 3, because obviously you're hitting 20k, forcing 15k shields, really nice numbers. But overall, it's a nice soul resource, so it's a permanent staple at this point. And to finish off the core deck cards that clear off the front row, we have Dedicated Serenade ELEONORE. ELEONORE's skill is Auto Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, you can Soul Blast 2, and this unit gets power plus 15,000 to the end of that battle. At the end of the battle, this unit attacks, though, you must then put this card on top of your deck. So this is, as I said, the last of the front row clearers, but this one actually goes to the top of your deck, which is really good for the fact that it actually helps set up with Feltyroza herself, because it guarantees you go to the top of your deck. It does give you huge power numbers, obviously 25k unboosted, 33k boosted, 43 if it's a Persona Rod as well. You're forcing a lot of guard out of your opponent. The only issue is obviously she is Soul Blast 2, so obviously with all the stuff that adds up, you do get really close to running out of soul quite often. If you spam this too much, you do have to be careful. Alright, and to round up the core cards, we do have joining CLASP ERNESTA. ERNESTA's skill is Auto Back Row Rearguard Circle. When your other ghost unit is placed on your rearguard circle during your battle phase, you may then stand this unit. So this is really good for the fact of obviously it's a restanding back row unit, so obviously you can swing in boosted, no care, clear off the front row, say ELEONORE, ANNELIESE. So you then can call back down to the front row with Feltyroza, ERNESTA will then stand to reboost it. It's a really nice target for the likes of, as I said earlier, Annelise for your power boosts and other things you might want to stack onto it. So obviously you can get the power twice onto the attacks. Only downside is it is back row locked, so you can't have her in the front row, call something to the other open front row rearguard circle, and then stand the front row ERNESTA. She is also vanilla outside the battle phase, so obviously if we do get a major stunned format back into it, you then can't call in the main phase to restand the unit. It is battle phase locked. So that is the cards covered. I'm going to show you on the screen now the actual core numbers that we'd be looking at. So as you can see here, we have obviously got 4 copies of Feltyroza, 1 in the ride deck, 3 in the main deck. You would then have 1 copy of Talent and Enjoyment Feltyroza in your ride deck, 4 copies of Ingrid in your main deck. We've only put 2 Annelieses in because it does vary in numbers due to obviously the fact of it only is 12k units, it doesn't scale that well. Then we've got 4 copies of ELEONORE and 4 copies of ERNESTA to round up. This is obviously, as I said, this is just core numbers. The actual lists themselves might include more copies of Annelise if you do want it, but you will never see less than these number of cards. Next up, we have the tech options. So what I mean by a tech option is some people do include them in their lists, but they're not guaranteed to be in every copy of the lists. So we're going to start off with the actual ride deck, because obviously if you noticed, we had the grade 3, we had the grade 2, but we didn't actually show a grade 1. And the reason behind that is there's actually variances with what people do include their grade 1s. So we're going to start off by covering the actual mainstay of it, which is Beautiful Day Off Feltyroza. Feltyroza's skill is, when this unit is rode upon, you can Soul Blast 1, choose up to 1 ghost from your drop zone and put it back into your hand. Her second skill is, during your turn, if you have a ghost on your rearguard circle, this unit gets power plus 2000. So this is only considered a half tech option, for the fact obviously it does use Soul, which you are reliant to Soul deck on. But obviously, for using said Soul, you do then get the card back you've discarded from your ride deck. You could even grab triggers as well, which is really nice because you do have ghost crits, draws, fronts, and heals. But obviously you have to be careful because obviously it's ghost restricted. So if you do end up having to discard, for say for example, a grade 3 Feltyroza, you will not get that card back. The other option people are looking at, instead of this, is the actual WILISTA engine. So obviously the grade 1 we then use would be Proof of Effort WILISTA. WILISTA's skill is auto when this unit is rode upon. You can put a card from your hand into your soul, and search your deck for one precious stone card, reveal it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. And the second skill is when you play an order, you may Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 till end of turn. So obviously she's really useful for that. Obviously she searches for a draw card to help you keep your hand size up. She's also obviously funding the soul instead of soul blasting, so obviously you put a card from your hand into your soul for her skill, and then obviously the precious gem will then go to soul as well. The only issue is obviously you do have to be careful of the number of the precious gems you run alongside her, because obviously if you only run one, you then damage check it by accident, you are then having a vanilla grade 2 turn, because you're not actually getting a skill off of WILISTA. Now the precious gem people actually use is True-Hearted Ruby. True-Hearted Ruby's skill is you can play this card with a Counterblast 1. You then draw 2 cards, choose a card from your hand and discard it, and then put this card into your soul. So True-Hearted Ruby is really good for the fact, obviously, as I said, it creates soul by moving itself at the end and turn. You are gaining extra draw power, because obviously you draw in 2, ditching 1 for playing the card. It is a ±0, because obviously you're playing 1, drawing 2, ditching 1. So you're more cycling than drawing, but it's a really good card. And you do have to obviously be careful for the fact, obviously, it uses Counterblast alongside Feltyroza, so you don't want to use too much, otherwise you could end up running out of Counterblast to actually use. Then to go alongside that engine, we actually have got Contradicting Kindness Virginia. Virginia's skill is at the end of the battle, this unit attack blast boosted. If you played an order this turn, you can tap this card into your soul and then countercharge 1. So this is really good for the fact of obviously you're countercharging, your soul charging, which are your 2 key resources for the deck. And it's also clearing out your front row as well, which is really good. So obviously you can then call into that empty circle with Feltyroza and combo off. You do have to be careful because obviously it is locked behind you haven't used an order. So you do need to have True-Hearted Ruby at hand to actually use the card. And obviously she is not a ghost as well, so she doesn't get the support from Feltyroza giving you more dead checks if you do check into it. Now to finish off the gem package, we do have mini live after school Katina. Katina's skill is auto when his unit is placed from the rearguard circle. You can soul blast 1 and discard a card from your hand to choose a precious stone card from your drop zone and add it back to your hand. So this is really good for obviously the fact of she combos really nicely with Virginia, because whilst Virginia's order locked, this then lets us grab back the order to then play again to then use Virginia. Combos off really nicely. Again, it's another not plus card because you're ditching 1 to pick 1 back up and you're using the resource as well. But the other thing you do have to be aware of, she is a non-ghost again, so you do have the extra chance of having a whiff on Feltyroza. So these cards you do have to be careful with your ratios and how much you actually want to put in. It does need a lot of testing behind it to make sure you hit the right numbers. Then we're actually going to move on to the actual ghosts themselves that support the deck and go through each of them now. First one up is Adoration Intensifying in Heart, Florenzia. Florenzia's skill is when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle other than from your hand. Until the end of turn, when your opponent would call cards from their hand into the guardian circle for this battle, this unit attacks, they must call 2 or more at the same time. So what we have here is the actual battle door effect of guard restrict, so they must call 2 cards from hand to guard with. You also then have to be wary because obviously she doesn't play when placed from hand, so it's got to be the top deck check from Feltyroza to actually get her skill off. And she then doesn't also remove herself at the end of the turn, so you have to then call something over her if you wanted to have that front row rearguard circle empty the following turn. Overall, she's got a nice skill, but won't see that much play, unfortunately. Next card up is Longing Tied Up HELWIG. HELWIG skill is also when it's used placed on rearguard circle during your battle phase. You put this card into your soul and then draw a card. Now HELWIG's really nice because the fact is obviously it generates your soul, which is a nice important resource. It's extra draw power for the deck. The only downside is she must be called battle phase, so obviously it is another relying on Feltyroza. But she's still a intercept, so obviously if you do end up with her being in hand, you can still guard with her compared to obviously with FLORENZIA, you can't actually guard with her. Next card up is the Bodyguards Captain MARLEEN. MARLEEN's got the skill of continuous on rearguard circle and guardian circle. If you have 3 or more ghosts on your rearguard circle, this unit gets power plus 2000 and shield plus 5000. So this is really nice. Obviously it's a 10k interceptor for us, which is really nice for the deck. 12k attackers, not too bad. It only scales really for the turn 2, because obviously, same with ANNELIESE, it's 12 plus 8 is 20. It's really good early rush card. You can then intercept off to cool down something or clear itself in the battle phase the following turn. Next card up is Sweet Tone KRIEMHILO. KRIEMHILO's skill is auto when this unit is placed on rearguard circle during your battle phase. You can Soul Blast 1 and this unit gets power plus 10,000 to the end of the turn. So again, we've got a nice bit of power scaling here, because obviously 18k attacker, 20 out on Persona Rides, all for the cost of a Soul Blast. You do have to be wary though, because obviously it's only when placed during your battle phase, so it's got to be done from Feltyrosa skill, so it's RNG based. And she doesn't actually scale with your boosters that well, because obviously they're 8Ks, she's 8K. With her skill, that makes 26. Not the nicest. Would have been good if obviously we'd got the 2k crits as well, because obviously that's going to make it 28k column, but we haven't got those yet for Lyrical. Next card up is Fulfilled Sweet's ANSELMA. Her skill is auto back by rearguard circle once a turn. When your other unit is placed on rearguard circle during your battle phase, you can Soul Blast 2 and draw a card. So this is really nice for the fact obviously it's draw power for the deck. You do have to though, because obviously it's 2 soul costs, which does contradict with ELEONORE, who also needs the soul really badly. And she's only 6k base, so she doesn't actually scale with anything outside of MARLEEN and ANNELIESE. Next card up is Little Lady HELMINA. Her skill is when each unit is placed on rearguard circle. If you have another ghost on your rearguard circle, choose one of your rearguards and it gets power plus 5000 to the end of turn. So HELMINA is really nice for the fact obviously it's power gain, lets your other unit scale. The only thing you do have to be wary of, obviously, she is on place only and she does need other rearguards, so it's a one-time skill. Past that she's vanilla, she doesn't clear herself off the board. And if you top deck her with no board, you then can't actually go for the power out because you've got no other ghost rearguards. That's it for the actual tech options, so we're now going to move to the example lists. I do want to stress these obviously are going to be example lists. These are going to be my thoughts only. I have used Dexander for some of the bases, which I do want to thank him very much for his website. It does help a lot with these videos. But these are my lists that I've made. They might be good, they might be bad. I've not properly sat down, thoroughly tested against the meta non-stop, because I don't have the time to sit and play Vanguard all day as much as I'd love to. But these are just good example lists that I've got here. First one I'm going to show you is going to be my pure version. So this one will actually have the grade 1 of the Feltyroza round line. As you can see here, we've got the 3, 4 INGRID and Feltyroza that we said were going to be staple. We've actually increased ANNELIESE up to 3. Just because she's also a ghost as well. She's a really good card. Yes, the pet scaling's not that amazing with it, but it's still a really nice card. We've then gone for 4 copies of HELWIG, just for that extra soul generation and draw power. 4 copies of ELEONORE, as said on the cause. 4 copies of Little Lady HELMINA, because obviously her 5k can then stack onto ANNELIESE to then make a 13k booster, which is really nice. 4 PGs and 4 copies of the ERNESTAs. I went for a 7 crit 4 draw in the end, The reason I've done this is the fact of you still want to hit certain combo pieces. The extra bit of draw power is really nice, but you still want the pressure of crits in general. Draw Trigger is also a ghost card, so obviously can work alongside the grade 1 Felty and the grade 2 Felty where need be. Whereas obviously the spare crit we've got is not a ghost card, so that's why I went for that option. Then the other example I've got to show you is the actual gem-based version with the grade 1 WILISTA in the ride line. So again, got the 3, 4, 3 of the Feltyroza, INGRID, ANNELIESE. That's not changing. I then took out the 4 HELWIGs to add in 4 copies of Virginia for that extra. Just obviously they both generate soul, but instead of getting the draw like we would off of HELWIG, we actually get the counter charge here instead. Because obviously we are a more counterblast focused deck in this one. Obviously still running the 4 copies of ELEONORE's, 3 copies of Mini Live KATINA, and 1 copy of the True Hearted Ruby. The reason why I've gone for 1 Ruby is the fact of, yes, if it gets damaged, it gets damaged, and I'll have to work around it. But the chances of it are low enough to where it shouldn't be a problem. And obviously, KATINA, I'm running at 3, because obviously 3 spaces left, and her only use is to literally grab back the gemstone to then put it back into soul again. And then obviously draw more cards to then try and filter ways out of this. I'd still go with 7 crits, 4 draws here, because obviously this one is now even more piece reliant. So obviously you'd expect me to run like 5 draws, 6 draws, but you still really want that crit pressure with Feltyroza. She is a multi-attack deck. She wants that crit pressure very much so. That was it now for the example list. This is now us moving on to the demonstration game. This is going to be a game between myself using the pure Ghosties without the WILISTA engine, and I'm going to be against Slate, who's also going to be using Zorga. And I shall see you guys in the game in a minute. Alright, and now we're back for game. You've got me at the bottom using Feltyroza, Slate at the top using Zorga. Slate did end up going first, so discards put Tug in Sleeve for Rancor Chain. Draws 2 and discards Grief Spare Rejection for the Rancor Chain skill. Then my turn, I draw into Feltyroza. I think I'd debate discarding Anneliese more for the fact of obviously I want to keep the Ingrids to set up combos up with. But no, in the end I'd actually do discard Ingrid for the fact of can't return 2 back to deck, so might as well just keep the 1 and return 1. Swing in for 1. Select no guards, I hit a draw trigger, so nice bit of extra hand advantage. Drawing a draw off the draw, so gives me a nice discard for ride deck if I do want to decide to end up grabbing the Ingrid back. Yeah, Slate discard Zorga for Husk Dragon to grab back the GDR. And we see Hendrina, Headhunter, and swinging for that. So obviously I'd give Trigger a pass. Being somewhat slightly greedy, I think the response is. Obviously could have done the over trigger, but yeah. See, it goes Chaser and no pass. So obviously mitigating how much damage I get rushed for, because when Slate played Zorga's, Slate really does go play aggro. Yeah, we've got 18, which obviously I'm not going to even bother guarding because I wouldn't say no to 1 damage. So we see damage check is APG. Come on. We did discard draw trigger for the Talent of Enjoyment and Soul Blast for Beautiful Day Off skill to grab the Ingrid back. And I debate going aggro myself, but in the end decided not to. Swinging for 10. Snow Garden met with a crit. Yep. Damage check 1's a crit. And damage check 2 is a draw trigger. So obviously the extra draw there for Slate. Obviously being aggro to 3 quite early in the game is not good. We do see the discarded overcoming the unnatural death to ride Zorga. That zone being set up quite nicely there. It's like just seeing what orders got to work with. I don't think there was many in there for the fact of not done much milling as such yet. Use Zorga skill to call back Zorga. Obviously, because Ghost Chase is in hand, that'll then get the Persona Rod for the following turn. And Sleeve Tongue and Bell comes out. And I hit the Overtrigger on the defensive, so that shuts down Slate's entire turn. I'm stuck with one Counter Blast, which is what I didn't want. So then we stand draw for turn. Got lots of pieces to work with here, which is really good for me. I am and I want to discard, but end up going for the Anneliese in the end. I can then stack Ingrid on top of the deck, grab Anneliese back to hand. Then obviously call ERNESTA, Anneliese, Ingrid, and the other ERNESTA. So obviously you've got nice cons here. Swinging in this side first for 20, which will then tuck and soul, giving the other ERNESTA the 5k. The 31k column, which is taken and is defensive crit, so Ingrid tucks to bottom. So obviously this is now trigger hit on the Vanguard. Being in the position of it's currently crit for game, chucks that in there, chucks the Ghost Chase down to bounce back the Zorga ready for Persona riding, which makes it a 2 to pass. Obviously, first check we know is the Ingrid, so obviously it calls there, counter charge for the skill, but then Ingrid skill will counter charge and stand the booster, and obviously the other ERNESTA stands because the card was gone to battle phase. Second check is another ERNESTA. I decided to not be greedy and go for the third check, but it's a PG, so I don't get any extra attacks. And then this obviously swings in again, gains the 5k on Ingrid, making it another 31k again. You see the PG dropping the Zorg come down. And then Ingrid goes to bottom deck again. Pass the turn back to Slate. We do know that Persona Ride is now coming down, as we see it. So 10k to Slate's entire front row. But we do know, obviously, now that the Grief Despair rejection, so there is going to be multiple skills going off. Just doing another check of what orders are in the drop zone. As far as I'm aware, from my memory, it was just overcoming a natural death in there, so not... Oh, and the Ghost Chase, obviously, you can add the oncoming back up, use the oncoming from the drop to get back the Ghost Chase to do stuff. Does sacrifice Alenia for her skill, and we do see Patient from the Underworld coming from hand with becoming the unnatural death in the drop zone. So obviously Cat Blast 2, Soul Blast 1, or the Soul Blast cost is mitigated because obviously Lania sacks off one of my ERNESTAs, pulls back a PG. Obviously adds the Ghost Chase back to hand, so obviously you can then balance the Ghost Chase, the PG with the Ghost Chase. It's a really good combo there. We get to use Zorga as well. Obviously I just had a bit nose in the drop zone because obviously that was the only grade 1 called. Well, obviously Slate technically called 2 at that point, but there was nothing really there to work with, so it didn't make it worthwhile. Forward and calls Can't quite remember the name. It's the one that grabs orders from the bind zone when it hits. The 10k went to the front row. And then obviously Headhunter's gained its 5k because Alchemy Magic was performed. Obviously the grade 1 there wants to try and use its skill to try and get the orders back, because obviously there's no orders in drop now. So next turn is going to be a bit of a problem unless we can get sorted. Yep, there's the 5k put onto the Headhunter. Obviously I'm sitting at 1 damage. So I decided to take the first one. First check's GDR. And second check is APG, which is no triggers, so it's a really nice spot for me to be in. And then I damage check and I hit a HELWIG, which to me is no issues, because don't really need it at this point because my soul's quite a nice size. I'm very wary that I don't want that side hitting, so obviously I chuck crit trigger and HELWIG in the way, just to stop the orders going back to hand and plussing. Sorry about that. So obviously we're just doing some quick math just to double check that we had got that guard right. So obviously it's 8 plus 8, 16, plus the 10, 26, plus the 5, 31, and I guarded for 30 to 33. Damage check is a heal from the other side, so it doesn't get to go off. So draw for turn, and I realise I'm in a really bad position because obviously I've got no front row attackers, really. So SERENADE obviously draws me another PG, call down ANNELIESE to the front row, so obviously I can get at least try and get 4 attacks in. And obviously I do chuck HELMINA down the front row, just so I can give a bit of extra power to the board. So we swing in first for 30k, 5k at the Vanguard, because obviously 5k from HELMINA plus the SERENADE. You do see crit defensive coming out from Slate. Obviously I tuck in, give 5k to the HELMINA. And then swing 23 at Vanguard, because obviously my thoughts are, if I hit double trigger, they can stack on the HELMINA, but if I at least get a normal unit, it can still go to the front row. So best of both worlds. Also, by me swinging in first with this one means that we can't see the Ghost Chase to bounce the PG from the back row straight back to hand. So we go. First check is the ELEONORE, which is amazing top deck to hit. So Cat Blast 1 for the extra drive and then restand the ERNESTA. Second check is another SERENADE. And third check is another ERNESTA. And this side swings in. This is 16, 21, 31k at the Vanguard. So because 23k base, it is a awkward 10k guard needed. But because of the Ghost Chase, it's not too bad. So obviously you can 5k guard with the Ghost Chase and then intercept with the Hendrina. Obviously I'm looking, I just scroll up to quickly look at see how many cards Slate's got in hand. Yep, we do see the Ghost Chase come down, but bouncing the sleeve tugging and intercept with that, which is fine. Meaning Slate setting up the sleeve tugging to call from hand to actually utilise the drop zone. And we obviously see PG to guard and sleeve tugging. And obviously then ELEONORE goes back to top of deck after gaining the 15k. See, don't see a SERENADE, but we do see the Headhunter come down, which is really good. And obviously counterblast Zorg skill to grab the sleeve tugging back, and it puts the orders in drop zone to gain 10k, which is really good because it obviously now helps out the Alchemy Magic, and as we can see, GDR then comes down on top as well. Logically should be, yep, as we see, combines with Overcome the Unnatural Death. So front row gains 10k, gets that Ghost Chase and a GDR back to hand. And obviously their 2 headhunters will each gain the 5Ks as well. So all columns are starting to look somewhat scary, but obviously you can see from my hand I'm not in the worst of spots for the fact of I'm sitting on a double PG. Now because I haven't seen the overtrigger yet, I want to play carefully and perfect guard in case the less favoured decides to make an appearance. And we do see a draw trigger actually come out, not the overtrigger. Gives 10k to one of the headhunters. Obviously now PG doesn't scare, the death doesn't scare me anymore, but I don't want the order going off to put stuff back into hand, so obviously I PG again. And this is where I did make a slight misplay, because obviously if you look at my hand, I know Eleanor's on top of the deck. I kind of want to keep the Eleanor to actually combo off with. But me being me, not paying attention, I take the damage, then realise it was the Eleanor. And I'm in slight troubles for the fact of, obviously, I've now got no multi-attack enabling. So I draw for turn, get a HELMINA, SERENADE. But thankfully managed to draw into Eleanor off the top decks. And obviously HELMINA comes back again for another round, giving 5k to the ERNESTA behind Eleanor. So it makes a really scary column to deal with. 48k when using the skill, which is really big numbers. Also, just put the 15k there ready. We are going to have enough to actually use the skill twice, which is really good. So obviously 48 swing coming in. Slate's not in the best of hands to guard it, so it does need to rely on the overtrigger at some point, or multiple heals. Just double checking how many heals have actually gone at this point. And 6 damage is not the heal, so that is the end of the game. Obviously, I just, for my own amusements, I show, well, that would be my drive checks, so I would have got a crit off the Feltyroza attacks. Alright, and I shall see you guys again in a minute. Alright, and we're back from watching the game. Once again, thank you very much to Slate for helping me out by being my opponent. It was a very fun game. As you can see there, Feltyroza is a very combo-orientated deck. It does still have the RNG side, as we saw when I did take the risks of with the ANNELIESE and not calling it for the extra drive check, and it did end up not get me another attack in the end. But got the results in the end. It's a lot of fun to play around with. You've got multiple different routes you can go with the deck. But that is it for this video. If you haven't done so already, please do like, comment, subscribe. It very much does help the channel. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye bye.